Well, thanks for having us here, and I apologize in advance if I start sounding like I've got a frog in my throat and getting over a cold, so might have to step aside and get a drink, but warning you in advance. My name is Vanessa Brulotte. I've been in recruiting for about 4 years, and I've done anywhere from third-party agency to corporate. And this is Cassie Whitlock. Most of you know Cassie because she's presented before, but she's been in HR for about 20 years, and she's awesome. Is it
lights off?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Is there a way to dim?
Just like that.
Perfect.
That's okay.
This is great.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. Well, we're both really excited to be here today to talk about how to find success in a competitive job market, and we can pretend that finding a job is fun, but let's be honest, it's not that much fun. So some of the learning topics we'll cover is, number one, social media. What do recruiters focus on in social media, and what can you do to use social media to help recruiters find you? Number two is overcoming being overqualified. How do you understand how to place yourself, considering compensation, experience, job fit? And third, resume tips, addressing skills gaps. What is quality versus quantity? And what are the relevant and transferable skills that you should have on your resume? So those are some of the topics we'll kind of go through. So I'll kind of start off with the first one, social media. Now you're gonna look at these, and sometimes I have people say, oh my word, recruiters are gonna look at all these, like what, I'm concerned you know, that this is what they're looking at. Don't worry. JobVite did a survey about a couple years ago that actually surveyed recruiters, and 87% of recruiters actually use LinkedIn. Boom. So I want you to focus on LinkedIn because that is the main source of where recruiters will look for their candidates. Just in the last year, I've talked to about maybe 60 recruiters in Utah, and all of them use LinkedIn. They might use Indeed.com, searching for profiles, but all of them use LinkedIn, have profiles, will search for candidates there. So that's the one I really want people to focus on, is that social networking for business professionals on LinkedIn. Now, social media and you, what can you do to be found? As you can see, I have my lovely profile picture and my profile. And the first thing I want to focus on is be visible. If somebody does not have a LinkedIn profile, they need to get one. So make sure you or anybody else has a LinkedIn profile, because if you don't, you're not being found by all the searches that, that recruiters are using on LinkedIn. And stay current. Now, staying current can mean a lot of different things. As you can see over in my profile, I've circled my title. And that's important, because when you connect with recruiters or anybody on LinkedIn, that's the thing that they're going to see without clicking your profile. I have about 250 invitations right now just on my LinkedIn profile. It's quickest for me if candidates make sure that their title says exactly what they want to do. If they want to be in social media, if they want to be an SEO manager or in sales, like make sure it is in the title. Because that's going to be the quickest way for a recruiter to be like, oh, that's what I'm hiring for, that's what I'm looking for, I want to connect with them. And LinkedIn is really great in the other sense of when candidates are applying for jobs, they most often than not have an opportunity to place their LinkedIn link into the application. And that's super important, because on a resume, they tell you, oh, only do 1 to 2 pages, which is hard because we all have lots of experience, or maybe you have 20 pages of experience. Like, but I did all these cool projects or things in my career, but you're telling me I can only put in 1 to 2 pages. That's where LinkedIn is awesome, because as a recruiter, I love it. I can look at the resume and be like, okay, well, they might have this and this, but I don't know about these other things. I go to their LinkedIn profile, I find it in their content, because you're able to go more in depth in your LinkedIn profile and actually list out the projects and all the things you've done in your career that's relevant to the role that you're looking at.
So Vanessa?
Yes?
What do you recommend them doing if they're not currently in a job with their title?
Put what you want to do. So you could say seeking SEO professional position, or seeking recruiter role, or seeking sales position, or I'm a sales ninja. I don't know. Whatever suits you and your personality, because that's the other thing, is be authentic in your profiles. It's so much more fun for me as a recruiter when I see people being themselves, and listing out, just showing your personality in the profile. Because then it creates more connections for me, right, that I can speak to, and then we can build a better a deeper relationship because you've been authentic. Did that help? Any questions? Okay, so I get this. Yes.
I was going to say, when we talked earlier, so Vanessa shared with me why she put 2 different words related to her job in her title. Maybe you want to share that.
Yes. Next bullet point. Actually. She's so excited. So I get this question all the time, to picture or not to picture. Do I have a picture? Because I've known people who are concerned, like, I don't know if I really want to put my picture up for various reasons. Put in a picture, and I'll tell you why. Because as recruiters, we get so many invitations, or professionals get so many invitations, and when there's not a picture, we wonder if it's a scam. Because there are people who actually create fake profiles within LinkedIn for various reasons, but because there's fake profiles, if there's not a picture, I will not connect with somebody. So just make sure, because the other thing too is it creates more of a personal effect, because then it humanizes that interaction, because you're like, I am human. Well, we're all human, but I'm human and you're human. Now we can be a little bit more personal. So. And what Cassie was talking to earlier is keyword optimization. As you can see in my title, I have talent acquisition partner and recruiter. And I did that because recruiters do Boolean searches when they find and source candidates. So, in the Boolean searches, we search for keywords with those Boolean searches. And the more that you have what you're looking for in your profile, the better searched you are. So if you saw my profile, you see talent acquisition partner, recruiter several times throughout my profile, and then you see full cycle recruiting and resume screening and every little thing that has to deal with my job. You see different keywords throughout my profile, and so that I can be searched in the top 100 profiles that a recruiter searches for. Because sometimes I might do a search and it pulls up 1,000 profiles, and then I've got to search it down, and then I get 500 profiles. What if I look through the first 100, because those are the ones with the most keywords, and then you didn't, and you're in the 300th profile, even though you could have good experience. So think about like the keyword optimization, how making sure that your profile is seen by a recruiter with the optimization. Yes?
How do you find the keywords? How do you know the keywords?
Of like what you should put in your profile?
Right.
So
get the recruiter's attention.
Yeah. So give me an example of like a position.
A position, executive assistant.
Okay. So executive assistant, we might look for, so making sure executive assistant obviously is in there. It could be if they're looking for words per minute or data entry skills, making sure that's in there, or different programs that they've used, because there could be project management tools that the company uses or that particular person has used, making sure that all the tools or platforms that they've used in their role is in their content. And if they've done any help as far as like other projects, because I know as an executive assistant, there's a lot of other areas in a company that you can touch. What if they've done a project with accounting, or they've done, I don't know, just a,
Especially
yeah, different specialties within that role. And looking at, here's something else you can think about doing, is looking at different positions that are up on job boards and looking at the keywords that are in there, and you can find out what kind of keywords those types of recruiters are looking for. Especially if it's a company that you're targeting, figure out what the words that they are using so they can find you more. Did that help?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yes?
I had one guy tell me that I needed to put the job I wanted like 12 times on LinkedIn. So I went into my profile and I did procurement, buyer, purchasing agent / manager.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that like 8 times. And at that point, it just seemed like I was being obnoxious. Because I
Yeah.
had to throw it in there. So as
Yeah.
and then that phrase, I did this and this and this. But it got to be a lot.
Yeah.
How many times do you think that should be in there?
Mm-hmm. No, that's a
To
really
get to
good
the
question.
top?
Yeah.
You said 12. And
Yeah.
At 8, I was like, well, this is really.
Yeah, because it kind
Horrible.
of feels a little bit excessive because you're
It
just
was
like, oh, it doesn't feel like a good flow. One thing to think about too is with that title, does every company call that particular position that title?
That's why I put all 3, and he told me to put all 3.
Okay.
Because there's buyer positions out there, and if I
Mhm.
put procurement, then he's telling me that the secretary may not know that they're the same thing.
Mm.
Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
yeah. So maybe use the title as like 2 or 3 times is fine, but then go into deeper detail within the actual role. Because when I do a Boolean search, my first part of the search is where I'm putting in the titles, and it pulls up all those profiles. But to get it down to the top 300 to 500 profiles, then I'm looking at years of experience, and I'm putting in keywords, like what are the specific tools that I'm looking for, and it won't make a difference if it's in there 12 times, the titles. You might pop up sooner, but you want it to be a good flow too. And so just look at the details of the position. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Did I
Sometimes,
reduce the 8 then?
so I think more than 5 times is excessive.
Okay.
Yeah, from the profiles that I've seen, they have used it up to 5 times, and then they really go into the details and like the specifics of what their skill sets are, and that's how they can be popped up. So, yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. I hope that helps. Any other questions? Okay, I like to talk a lot, so if it doesn't make sense, you tell me.
You and JD.
I know. He's so great. So social media and targeting. I love talking about this because this is something that candidates can do, and this is what some people miss out on. I can have a candidate come in that has never researched the company. They don't know what products and services that we do. They don't know the culture. They haven't done their homework, and that's going to set what's going to set them apart is if they have done the research and done their homework, understand the company mission. Can you speak to the product or service? Do you know the culture? It's kind of like somebody walking up to you and saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to meet you. What's your name again?" And it just you lose out and like, "Oh, I thought you were excited to meet me. Why were you excited to meet me?" And the difference of somebody coming up to you and be like, "Oh my gosh, you know, Cassie, I'm so excited to meet you because I've heard you've done this, this, and this. I've heard you're so great to be around." It's a different interaction. And these are a couple of platforms that I put up that individuals can research. LinkedIn obviously is a really great resource because companies will have their profiles up and created. And they'll a lot of times put up a lot of good content that's recent, and you can see and interact with them that way. Facebook, you can interact with them on there, see what their culture is like and how they do their advertising. Glassdoor is another great resource. You can look up reviews about the company, how are their interviewing processes, getting tips and tricks from candidates, as well as understanding how the employees feel. Comparably.com, I've recently looked into that one, and that one's a really great one to look at to understand how the company's it's very similar to Glassdoor, where you can look at reviews and the company profile. YouTube, you can find out more information on their products and services or different advertising things that they've done. Or if you've looked on the company's the main website page, it'll link to YouTube a lot of the times. And Twitter, I might get a giggle or two about Twitter because Twitter is, you know, I don't know, I just think it's funny with the bird, but but with Twitter, it's really great because a lot of companies are becoming influencers. There's a lot of influencers on Twitter that you can connect with and that candidates can connect with business professionals and kind of see the different content they've been posting and get to know them as professional people and what they like to follow. It's a really great resource. So targeting particular companies, this is some other additional resources that are benefit to anybody who has a LinkedIn profile. Networking. I always tell people, they ask me, okay, well, how do I really get to know a culture? I've done all my research, but I still don't feel like I've immersed myself into it because I'm not there, which makes sense. And one of those ways that I tell them is connect with the employees from those companies and get to know them a little bit better. Ask why they love working there and ask about their career path. It kind of is just an easy way to create and build relationships with the employees there and make those connections. And then the other thing you can do is interacting through content. And there's a couple things that you can do to interact with content, and that could be your own content. I love it when I look at somebody's profile and they've created their own content on something that they're passionate about, because then it shows me, wow, they're being proactive with their passions. Like, this is so interesting. And it adds on to their profile. If they don't have like a blog or a site, it adds on to the basic application where I'm able to see their actual work. And I also get to see what activity they have and what, how they interact with other people's content and seeing what they're proactively being passionate about. And I want to explain that in a way of like, you all know Flo, right? Everyone knows Flo from Progressive. Yes. Flo is awesome. And we all know her because she's everywhere. And that's how this kind of scenario works too, is that if this person is interacting through content, other people's content, they're asking people why they love working the company that they've researched, and they're making themselves known out there. They're becoming Flo as a candidate. So tell them to be the Flo. That's your tagline. So now I'm going to pass the baton over to Cassie, and she's going to talk about the last two talking points.
While you're doing a mic swap, is the social media really, is it really necessary in today's job market? I mean, you know, I'll be honest with you, I'm a baby boomer, so I'm not really overly excited about social media. Is that really going to be a necessary evil in life for job seekers today?
Yes. Social media is becoming a huge platform for most recruiters to search for sourcing candidates and finding candidates. Because what we're finding right now is that JobBite just put out an article that stated that there's not enough talent for recruiters to go after because we have a good employment right now. And so they're turning to social media, especially LinkedIn, to find candidates who are working or not working, because we have to go there to find people. It's becoming like the main platform. So it's very important if anybody wants to be competitive in today's market. That's the main platform.
I guess a little more in depth, because my last job I was let go because of a political post on Facebook. That some not so kind person informed my company that I made this post. Isn't it a double-edged sword?
So if I could jump in, I'm going to speak from, I'm an introvert. I'm a quieter person. I don't do social media. But I do appropriately use social media for my job hunt. So one thing we all know is if you've put it on the internet, it is on the internet and anybody can see it. Everyone should know that employers can check that, and sometimes it impacts candidates' ability, sometimes it impacts current employment opportunities. And while I can't speak to any one scenario, just remind people, if it's on the internet, anyone can see it and make decisions based on that. So I'm not someone who enjoys being online. That's not my jam. I just like to be in the background. I like being quiet and doing my thing. But to be successful in employment and making sure that you've got good opportunities when you're looking, and then you're known in your field locally, you do need to be engaging. I'm on LinkedIn. I don't do Facebook. I don't do Twitter. I don't do, those are not things that I do, nor do I need to do them. If I wanted to do a lot of public speaking, I would have to do that. It's just, it is what it is. One of the things that's interesting, so Mike had mentioned, what if you're older, right? I'm not 18 anymore. What's interesting is you have to think about it from a recruiter's perspective. I'm a recruiter. I've got 150 applicants that have come in for a job opening, and I see candidates who are understanding and researching my company, engaging with content on the company, and I have somebody who doesn't even know what our product or service is. Which one am I going to be more drawn to? The person that is a little more assertive in showing that they care about the company, the role, the whatever. Now, you don't have to be this massive extrovert. You don't have to be going out of your time all the way. But find something that's comfortable for you and start engaging. So for sure on LinkedIn, make sure you've got a good profile. When and how you connect with folks, that's right, that next step to do that. But you are facing millennials who spend a lot of time. They won't just get any job. They choose their jobs carefully. And so you're kind of competing with a persona like that, right? And it's bigger than age. It's really about the new work expectation of engaging beyond what's on your resume. So we'll go into some more of that, but yeah.
Just a brief question. I'm kind of new to LinkedIn, and I feel like I'm building a pretty strong profile, but I'm getting a lot of recruiter interaction, but some of it doesn't feel legitimate. Like sometimes I think I'm dealing with a robot or just somebody who's out to sell a product, because, you know, if I respond, sometimes it's taking me to the credit card page, and I'm like, no, this is not what I was after. So is there, maybe, are you going to give some tips on how to recognize that?
That's totally fair. So just like Vanessa worried about, is there a real person on the other side? You should also be worried about, is somebody trying to just scam me? Absolutely.
I was going to say, because it's, recruiters have so many things on their plate, I've talked to recruiters who have 60 positions they've got to fill in like 3 weeks or yesterday. And so a lot of them will do a mass email to maybe 1,000 profiles. They don't necessarily target to individuals. I don't like to do it that way because it feels like you're getting a robot. And you're just like, oh, this is like the same email that tons of other people are getting. And so that's when you get to decide, do I want to go where they're targeting me individually as a person, they're making it personalized, or, you know, are they just sending out a mass email to whomever to get as many people as possible? So it's kind of doing your research too on the company, and but you obviously know it's a scam if they're sending you to credit card pages, and then just you can block them too if they do that. But a lot of recruiters that I've been speaking to are trying to make it a little bit more personalized, so they've actually read your profile and your experience.
So if you send a personal note back and you don't get a personal response, that's probably a good indication, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And for the record, you do not need to give any credit card information or Social Security kind of data through LinkedIn. If they're asking for that, run. You don't need it. The only time they would need Social Security numbers is after there's been an offer of employment, right? If there's a background screening process, anything before then, no go. All right, let's jump into, so Mike talked to me. He's like, what do you do if you've got a wealth of experience? How do you compete with somebody who's entering the market and will take a lower pay and a wage? And what do I do with all of my experience to not be overqualified? That's a real pain point. So I've got a couple of things that I wanted to share, and a lot of it's from how companies think about the positions, what they do in order to say, yeah, we're going to hire, this is what the role is going to be. And the first one is, hopefully most organizations have a compensation model that they're using internally that helps drive, what do we pay people, right? Otherwise, I just got my dice and I'm rolling them, and Mike gets $10 and the next person gets $12. You know, that doesn't quite seem fair to me. But maybe dice is a great way to do it. No. So for organizations that have compensation models, there are elements that help to equally measure all roles as far as their impact to the company. And it ends up fitting into a scale. Your scales are usually going to be 1 to 20-ish, with 16 and higher being mostly executive roles. 1 through 5 are going to be your entry-level roles. 9 or 10 and above is management functions or super deep technical. So that's kind of the lay of the land of where your scale sits. And then there are pay ranges assigned to each of those numbers, right? And what's interesting is they tend to overlap. So if I'm in a job that scores a 2, and this is my pay range, a 3 overlaps and goes like this, right? That's a lot of how compensation models are built. So one of the problems you might face is if I have 20 years of experience in HR, but the job I'm applying for says 3 to 5, is it fair of me to expect that the company pay me for my 20 years versus the 3 to 5 that they need and are asking for? That's one of the issues where we have to start making hard choices about what jobs we are applying for. When I see applicants who come into the system and they have more experience than what we're asking for and an appropriate higher compensation level, I really worry about, is this the right role for them? And so there are good intentions when people get ruled out of the qualification because their compensation desires are too high. But again, it's based off of this model that you have in your organization that helps to drive how compensation is analyzed. And the thing that I love most about it is the fairness that it creates across the board. So that it's not about, is it a male versus a female? Is it age? Is it ethnicity, right? All of these things that sometimes we worry about is how am I being evaluated? Compensation models are there to help fix that so that it's based on business impact. As we talk about it in the HR world, it's called chopping the head off. I'm not grading the person, I'm grading the job description. So if you're applying for a job and you are overqualified, you have to do something about it or you will be skipped over. Especially when there's a lot of applicants who have the perfect experience range that you're seeking for. And we'll talk about some ways to do that. Another thing to consider is the size and complexity of the company. If I'm at a smaller organization, say 100 employees, and I'm overqualified for the role, that company is less likely able to absorb my excess skill set. I just had this right now, so we're looking to add a new team member for our HR ops team. And I thought, there was one candidate that came through and I thought, good experience, a little bit more than what they need, kind of lacking in this one area. If we had a team of 10, they would be perfect. I don't have a team of 10. But as companies are bigger, they can absorb a different variety of skill sets, including gaps and excess skills, or super deep or super lengthy experience. Does that make sense? So be aware of the company you're applying for to know realistically how well your skills will fit them, or you're really overqualified and you're just going to quickly be passed along. The other one is really start thinking of the role, not your personal experience. If you had to take your resume and strip out everything about you as a human and it suddenly became a job ad, how does it match to the job ad you were applying for? And is there alignment or is it misaligned? Whether it's through the amount of experience, the specific type of experience. I know so whenever I've been looking for a job, I have great hope. I'm confident in my skill sets. I know that I can do it. I can learn anything. I can do it all. But the reality is that it's much easier to find somebody who's already just kind of lined up to the job description. So when you're looking at jobs you want to apply for, do it. Take away the personal stuff. Just look at the core skills. And if you're too far out of alignment, yeah, maybe you could try. But job hunting is also frustrating. So making sure that you're mindful of that, the stamina that it takes to do that, rather than just kind of getting frustrated and giving up. I see it a lot for entry-level roles. A lot of people like to get their foot in the door, and we'll talk about that in a minute related to skill set. Another thing that I have seen is people talk about, but I've got 15 years of experience. You're not offering the right pay. A lot of folks like to use pay technology. So there are different companies that have a whole database full of who's paying what for what kind of work. The problem I see is most individuals that go to those sites plug in their personal data. So I'm going to say, oh, I have exactly this year experience and this much education, and I do have these 5 criteria. But if I plug in the job description I'm applying for, that will spit out a different number than my personal experience on my resume. Does that make sense? So that's yet another way to use technology to really help you assess how viable an option is that you're looking at. There's a question.
Do you have a site that you recommend to look at?
There's PayScale is a big site that does compensation. Salary.com does compensation. There are a couple of specialized. Robert Half does salary guides, things like that.
How do you spell half? Is it H-A-L-F?
Yep,
Oh,
Robert Half. Yep, the old accounting world. That's where I come from.
So I don't know if you're going to get into this, but so you have the experience, you apply for a job, but I don't like the word dummy down a resume. How do we going to get there?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Perfect lead-in. Thank you,
All
Mike.
right.
Okay, so how do you map your experience to the role? How do you take a plethora of great work that you've done and better map it to the job? Because maybe you are okay with the lower pay. Maybe you are okay with reduced responsibilities compared to what you've done before. If that is the case, then here are a couple of tips that we would recommend. And Vanessa and I consulted together because I thought, I know what I think, but I also wanted to hear from a recruiter who sees it all day long. What should people be doing? This is where you want to make sure you're using that summary, objective statement, whatever it is at the top of the resume, that's that conversation you want to have to really help explain why you're going for that job. If I'm overqualified, I need to be telling them why I'm interested in using my talents for that job. I don't need to say, I know I'm overqualified, but please consider me anyway. But be thoughtful about how you craft that message and tell them why you're applying for the role. Really talking about how your experience can impact that role. Right? That's going to be a much more compelling message. Say, hey, I've done HR for 20 years, but here's what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about having, say something boring HR stuff, right? I love policies. But talk about what policies can do for an organization, and then what I contribute to making great policies effective in a company. That's a message that everyone can connect to, and they know what I'm passionate about, and then they can better see me in the role even if I'm way overqualified. So think about using your summary effectively. Another trap that we tend to run into when we have lots of experience is we forget how relevance is king. Instead, we love to put on our sparkles, right? Put on my flashy outfit, just be ready to go to the ball. I have seen where people are applying for an entry-level role and they're listing 25 years of management experience. Help me understand how this is going to work out good, how you're going to be happy in this role for any length of time beyond one day. Because clearly you can do more than this entry-level role. So speak to that. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't say I've been a manager, but then give it context, right? I've worked in management and I understand how important X is, right? Delivering a great client experience. I love building brand loyalty and I'm excited to, right? Talk about it, have a real conversation, but position what you've done in ways that I'm not worried about the fact that you're a manager applying for a non-manager role. I connect that you are applying for a client-facing role and you get client-facing issues. Does that make sense?
I have a little bit of trouble with that determining, because some of the job descriptions that I'm reading are so outrageously flourishing, you know, in their detail, that sometimes it's hard to really determine if you're applying for an entry-level thing or something. I mean, it seems to me like some of it's really too wordy. You know, it's like,
yeah, it can
over
be.
the top.
It could be hard to understand. What are they looking for? Do they want managers? Do they not? Hopefully this is where some of your research comes in. You can see a job title that they're advertising for. Go look at other people that work for that company. Look at their work experience. You can start to understand it better. And maybe you need to jump on a phone call, right? Reach out to a recruiter and ask them what's needed.
Yeah, I've had candidates all the time before they apply message me and say, hey, before I put in my application, I just want to understand what this role is, like what are you expecting, because I don't want to waste your time. And I love that, because they're having a very open, honest conversation with me, and then we can hop on a quick call and figure out if it's going to be a good idea or not. Yeah.
It's good to know. Thanks.
I do that. So on that angle, can you smell the wolf in the sheep's clothes? So we've dummied down our resume. We were going into an entry-level job because we need a job. But our real goal is to get back to our senior position. Can you smell that in us when we come? You know,
I don't smell it.
But you know, I'm carrying a satchel full of experience, right? I'm an engineer, and so I've designed thousands of products, right? And I can do it backwards and blindfolded, and I love it. But I want to do it as a senior level person, using all my attributes. Doing that, also making a lot better money than the entry level, but I'm not getting hired for anything, so I'm going for everything. I'm going for the entry level, I'm going for the mid level, I'm going for the senior, in hopes that
you may be
getting
right
back to where I want to be.
So let me go back a slide. This is where you want to really understand the size and complexity of the org. Maybe the opportunity is there, and there's a chance if I can start, I'll have that growth opportunity. But depending on the size of the company, that opportunity may not be there at all. And if the recruiter knows that, depending on what's important to that company, they may pass you over without a pretty compelling case that you make as to why your level of experience would be interested in that. Reach out, be a person, talk to them, discuss it, but sometimes it's going to be a dead stop. Our recruiters they have crystal balls, right? They're psychically in tune with their hiring managers and guessing what's coming down the line. It doesn't hurt to try, because maybe you're a blip on that radar and you're in a talent pool, and when they do go to say, oh, we need someone senior, maybe they passed you up for an entry level, but they go back to that talent pool of people that had applied, and there you are in their list, and they can check into that. So you don't want to, I want to be careful with the word dummy down. I really don't think you have to dummy it down. You just have to frame it to maybe the broader aspect of the field, and less about, I was a manager and did hiring and firing. That's not what this job is. Does that make sense?
Sure. I'm just trying to look for a balance. I had an interview for a really entry-level job, and you know, they flat out asked me, why are you in here? And I said, well, one, I need a job, but two, I look, and it was a very big company, I said, I look at you and see that I can work my way back to being where I want to be. I said, once I get in here and prove to you that I have these talents, I'm hoping that you see the relevance and want to keep me. And then I got ghosted, but that's
dang it.
So my issue, going back to talking to a recruiter, is that 90% of the applications we do are online and don't provide any of that information. And even when you do the research, people are very reluctant to give us the contacts and the recruiter, to talk to a recruiter, to even talk to them about the position.
Yeah.
So how do you overcome that bridge? Because that's 90% of what I run into, is you can't get to somebody.
Vanessa, how do people get to you?
LinkedIn. Yeah,
Even then it's hard.
Yeah,
For sure.
Yeah, because it's all, LinkedIn is hard because you have to be connected somehow within a first and second connections group. That's why it's so important to build out your network now, and try to get connected, try to get introduced to some of those people that you want to be introduced to. And yeah, so some recruiters are hard to get a hold of because, like I was telling you before, a lot of them are overworked with tons of things. They don't have the time to be more personable. That's my approach, as well as a few other recruiters like that approach. But it is the best way to get a hold of recruiters if you can't go out the other forms of contact.
There's no silver bullet, right? That's, you all know this, right? It's hard out there. So keep trying, keep tweaking things, iterate, be experimental, really find what's going to work for you. The last one, just making sure that you understand the role will help you position your skills, any conversations you're having, right? Kind of bundling it all together. The better you understand the role, the better you can actually map yourself to that role. So it does take some homework on that front. Another thing companies start to worry more and more about is why us? Why this job? And so are you prepared to speak to that? There's a lot of, like I said, millennials have a strong track record of researching their company and carefully selecting, I want to work here, period. And they come with such excitement for the work and the services that that organization is going to provide. Where's yours? And how do you stand out relative to that other persona that's done their work? Right? So we'll get somebody that might say, hey, I want a job that lets me work from home. That's a me statement. You haven't said anything to the company that you're willing to do for them. Totally get that you may want a work from home job, but there's a different way to approach it, right? So maybe it's better to start talking about what you're passionate about. What is it that you can do with your skill sets and why you could do it quite well in a work from home setting, right? That's a better way to talk about the opportunity. One of the things that with technology is systems can see duplicate applications in the system. I know if somebody's applying to join my team and I type in their name and it'll show me how many times they applied and for what different positions. And for me as a manager in HR, I need people who are passionate about what we do because it's hard work. And so if I see that they applied for every position across the company, I am instantly not interested. Period. Because is my team just another one that they're applying for? Or is this the one and they were just trying to get a foot in the door in all these other ways?
So let's say you've applied for 5 jobs in marketing the past 4 or 5 months at the same company. Is that a negative thing too?
I don't think so because it's all marketing. But what I see is I'm applying for sales, I'm applying for recruiting, I'm applying for programming, I'm applying for customer support. I'm like, wait a minute, which one are you?
So you're okay as long as it's in the same field?
I think focus on your field, absolutely. That to me shows, oh, this person's genuinely interested in our organization. It also means every time you're interacting, you need to make it count. Because I can see all those times, right? And so you start to have this track record of interacting with the organization even though I just applied. Does that make sense? Okay.
I'm guilty of what you just talked about.
Which is understandable, right?
I work for a water and wastewater company in the valley, and there's another one that's just as big. And I've applied at West Tech. My career has been engineering, estimating, and procurement.
Me too. We're in the same field, the same competitors. We should talk.
Yeah.
See?
Sure.
Networking. Here we have it, and no social media.
But I've applied for several positions at this company, probably 10. But they're all things I could do.
Yeah.
And I would revise the reason I'm asking my question is each time I would revise my resume for that position.
Yeah, good.
Okay, but you're telling me now that they can see all my resumes. They'll go, well, was he lying here and here and here? And this is the truth? Because they're all true.
Yeah, for sure. I've done that before. So my undergraduate is business management and accounting, and my master's degree is in human resources. If I'm applying for a CFO or a controller role, I'm more interested in emphasizing my accounting skill set. And if I'm looking at an HR role, I'm more interested in talking about the other. I'm not going to be dishonest. I'm not going to change the facts that I have, but it's all about how you highlight it and how much time I spend talking about accounting when I'm looking for an HR job. Does that, so an appropriately focused but balanced approach to it. When I do that, I tend to prioritize my skills according to the job I want, and then peripheral skills, you know, additional skills. That's another great place for LinkedIn, right? Where you can go into depth of, I do both functions, and here's this one and here's this one. But in my resume, I just want you to pay attention to my HR.
Okay. I've kind of been doing that.
Yeah.
I put my LinkedIn profile at the top, so all I have to do is click on it and they're there.
Exactly. And they'll see the full breadth and depth. The other thing I do is I like to use the summary to really talk about what role I'm looking for and what I bring to a role and why you would pick me compared to anyone else outside of my skills and work history.
Is there a coaching session for LinkedIn?
I guarantee you, if you Google it, there are a bazillion.
The Department of Workforce Services teaches the LinkedIn course.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
Had one here last week.
There's a lot of free content online. You've got a lot of people who care about helping folks find jobs, and they'll give their own personal version of it. So go out there and look. There's plenty to learn, and you'll find the little pieces of information that work best for you.
So on your searches in LinkedIn, how in depth does that search go? Like, I started using things like the project stuff, being very specific about a project that I've done. I've used this blah 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 in technical jargon, so that if somebody is searching for those technical informations, it pops up. Does it work? Does LinkedIn work that well? Okay.
That's exactly why we're recommending to be on LinkedIn, is for that. Because if you tried to put that in your resume, I think we'd all go to sleep.
No.
Right?
My resume wouldn't be a resume, it'd be a book.
Exactly. That's the problem. No, that's exactly why you want to do it. And be thoughtful in crafting what you have on LinkedIn, right? You still need it to be consumable, but if they want to start digging deep, they can. So I've seen people who have attachments to their profiles, and you could go all sorts of technical deep there, but make sure you're driving there from kind of the profile.
I go back and put pictures of the device I designed.
Yeah.
Into, and I mean, so it's,
for sure. A portfolio, if it's appropriate, absolutely do that. The more information they have, the better they can understand what your skills are, what it looks like in the outcomes arena, and then map it to their job and say, is this a good fit? Because at the end of the day, that's what all recruiters want, is they want that win-win fit. And if they see a gap on one side or the other, they're going to give it to somebody who there's a good match.
Well, it still comes down to, I take the entry-level position.
Yeah.
Even though what I want is bigger than that.
Yeah.
We're getting to the point now where I take, a greeter at Walmart.
Yeah, that's tough.
It's very technical, by the way. I know a friend who's got that job.
Exactly.
With mid to larger size companies, when we apply online to a position, our resume is good. We've got some great help resources there, right? So our resume is great, LinkedIn's great, and theoretically there's a shortage of talent, right? And we have on our resumes like lengthy experience in positions, right? We're not like millennial where there's like year here, 6 months here. So when we apply, it sort of feels like we should at least be getting a call, right? And then maybe an interview. And it seems like a lot of times there's just an auto rejection. Can you kind of give us a peek behind the curtain? Like what
How many applicants did we have last year at our company?
On average per position, about 200 applications per role.
Per person.
Did you see them first? Wow. Like the sort of the urban legend, right, is that it goes to
that a computer
box,
does it.
Right, the computer does an initial.
It depends on the company.
Yeah, like what is that?
So at the company we're currently working at, we don't. It's all in human screened up front. But there are organizations that will run it through technology that's looking for that word matching. So if you've done the SEO, using the right words, terminology, building them in appropriately, be it through titles or descriptions, it will never harm you. If that's what you're worried about, then you'd better be scouring those job ads really, really well and super customizing your resume to make sure that you're speaking the same language.
What is an SEO?
Okay, SEO, search engine optimization. That's when I type into Google and say Mustang, how does it know I'm looking for a Ford Mustang? How does it know it's a car instead of a horse? Right? It doesn't but if I type Ford Mustang, I shouldn't be seeing any horses. But I will see their pony logo, and I will see...
Besides the SEO for specific keywords, because, you know, I think most of us probably have that. You know, you can always do better or whatever.
Yeah.
What are some of the other things that, you know, maybe that looks for? You know, like for some of us, the worry is, right, that it's seen like, you know, 10 years at this company, they're overqualified, that's it. They go to the trash bin, right? Like what are some of the other things that we should look for, you know, like well, anyways, I've had some help where like, you know, you take this off or you only give them the 10 years, right? You don't give them your whole career. What are some, I guess, what are some truths there and what are some myths? Or
okay, I'm going to let Vanessa fill in the blanks here. That one's way out of my technical realm.
To bounce off something Cassie said earlier is that there are a lot of companies that they parse resumes because they might get tons of applications coming through. So the way it parses is it does use that SEO. And what I found, I hate programs that parse resumes because I used to work at Robert Half where I had resumes coming through and we would parse resumes. But what it did is it excluded candidates who were actually qualified, but they just didn't have all the keywords that we happen to be looking for. So I don't like that, but there are recruiters who do use that.
What does parse mean, by the way?
Parsing resumes.
Oh, parsing?
Parsing resumes.
Another word for sort.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Okay.
Thank you.
It basically takes all the words out of it and puts them in a list that says how many words match.
Yep.
And the and or don't matter.
Very
Okay.
personal.
I mean, I'm sure it varies by industry and
Yeah.
such, but like what, I don't know, typically what we use for mid to larger size companies, is it really, really common? Is it, well,
I could see it more common in larger companies because they may have 5 recruiters for 3,000 employees. And they may not have the time to go through every resume and respond to every applicant. It's just not possible. But that's why the small to medium, large size companies can be a little bit more personalized. And because there's so many applicants that do come through, it becomes very competitive. And so if they do see something where it's like automatically, oh, you have like 10 years of directorial experience and you're not giving me any information on why you're applying for an entry level, having that summary or something to anticipate that decline, but showing them, do not decline me because this is what I'm actually passionate about. This is what I'm passionate about this particular role, and helping the recruiter see why it's a good fit. And so that summary becomes very essential in that sense. Other than optimizing the resume and how to get away from being excluded in the parsing program, I don't know what else to say other than making sure that it fits to the role and optimizing it. So does that help?
it does. I had an experience where it's like I had a friend at a company, although in a very different role. I had a friend, gave me a tour, introduced me to the hiring manager for the role that I was applying for, right? Like everything was like green lights, applied to the job, and then it was like, you know, quick, you know, within days, like auto rejection, right?
And did they send an email or did they call you?
Email, no, just, yeah. So, and they didn't know, and they were like, yeah, if that's happened, like we can't go to anybody kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I hope that we can change, as recruiters, we can change the way that we do approach that. Because anybody, for me personally, I believe that anybody you've had contact with, whether over the phone, interview, anything like that, they should have a call. And that's how we like to do things. But I know that a lot of recruiters just don't have the time to do that. I apologize that you had that experience.
No, like the hiring manager didn't even know. It's like I haven't seen, like they weren't notified. It's just, it was a larger company.
Did you do like a follow-up email to say like, hey, is there anything I can improve on? Like,
I had a phone call with them, but apparently, I don't know, HR was in their company, it didn't really jive.
Didn't translate.
HR does what HR does, we do what we do.
All right, we're going to try and get through the rest of this because we're already stretching beyond our time limits, but comment, question?
One of the easier ways to figure out what words they're going to parse for is to look at key qualifications, essential functions. Look at those little phrases they put, usually at the end of the description. Look for the keyword in there. Make sure that's in your resume, in your bullet points, or in your summary, so that the electronic system can find it when it parses.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a website called JobScan that you can actually put in the job description and put in your resume, and it will actually
tells you how well you match.
I believe it's JobScan.
JobScan.com.
I'll get it to
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. And one of the things that we've been talking about is more and more I'm seeing that organizations care about tenure and success at the company. So being ready and able to speak to being overqualified, and are you going to be bored in the role? Is this just looking for other opportunities? At the end of the day, I see the pain in hiring managers when they see someone who's got other skills. We're like, but I actually have to get this much work in this job title before it was even worth it to the company, before you just jump ship to another role. So be mindful of that need. Again, in smaller organizations, that pain is more acute. Larger organizations can flex better with that. Just couple last comments on resume tips. Some of this is 101, but in the hiring world, we still see these issues. We see where people aren't paying attention to the detail. And the one invitation I had is, I'm part of the old school, the old guard. I remember circling ads in the resume, and you would walk down to the building, right, and passing out a resume left and right. That was a lot of hard work, and you were pounding the streets trying to get a job. It's different now. Now you're no longer walking the street to do it. You're figuring out your social media strategy. You've spent time building your LinkedIn profile and building networks. You are specifically researching organizations that you are applying for, so you know how best to target your resume to highlight your ability to be successful in the role. One of the problems that we will see with someone who's got more experience is we speak a lot about our experience, but then there are skill gaps that we're not acknowledging compared to the job ad. So I put this picture in. You've got a person working at the front desk, and there's this big, long orange extension cord. And the story is that an applicant walks in for an interview, or it was a new hire or somebody, and they said, what's with the extension cord? Like, what extension cord are you talking about? You know, the big orange extension cord out at the front reception desk. They're like, there's no extension cord. I said, okay. Go to the next person. What's with the extension cord? They were so used to it that nobody paid attention and saw this big, long extension cord that a long time ago someone had a power issue in their outlet and ran it down the hallway. And after the power outlet issue was solved, guess what stayed? The extension cord. We all have orange extension cords. Everybody. And I see that most often in skill gaps for those who have more work experience. So you need to be clear with yourself where those skill gaps are and make sure that you're doing something about it. The good news is you are in a time where you can learn faster than ever before if you're willing to put in the work. I don't have to go to college to do it. I don't have to go get a book and read it. I can go online. There are people out there who have produced easily consumable content, videos, and you can be narrowing any gaps that you have so that you're better qualified. Small and medium businesses may not have the infrastructure to skill you up for certain gaps. Larger ones have some of the rigor built into their org. They have that economy of scale and they can help with the skill gaps, so know that. The bigger your gap is compared to the job ad, right? Different size companies and complexities can handle it differently. So keep up with your technology. Don't give up. I'm still never going to be a social media person, but I will do good on my LinkedIn, right? That's the place where I'm going to be. Quantity and quality. We tend to see a lot of quantity. For those of us who have more experience, I can show years and years and years. Start speaking more compellingly about the quality of the work you do. That's another great way to position your skills so that it's less about, I've done it for 15 years, that job will bore me, and more about, I am amazing at this function. It's a great way to infuse passion. I talked about it earlier, but really focusing on the most relevant skills, highlighting those, and applying a qualitative aspect to it, right? When I think of this, I smile every time I see a resume and it says, I know Microsoft Word, I know Excel, I know PowerPoint, I know all of these things. And for the most part, that is a general expectation. So unless the job ad is calling for it, use that space for something you're good at, not kind of those basic things unless the job is calling for it. So make sure it's super relevant. We see lots of issues with spelling and grammar. Vanessa knows I'm a hard grader. I do it to myself. But if I see someone's resume coming in and they're not showing attention to detail, they're not showing me that they cared enough about their representation to me of their skill set, that they did a once-over, ran it through a spell check, had someone else look at it, why would I suppose they would have that level of care and detail in the job I need them to do? It's hardcore, I know. It is what it is. I have those strong expectations in roles I hire for. You should assume that anybody hiring has that expectation. Listing dates is interesting because once you're no longer 18, do you list dates? Do you not? I would say do not list dates unless you're using dates to do two things: to demonstrate how much experience you've had, length of experience, whether it's tenure in an org. I can add up how many years you've been doing procurement, right? Whatever it is. Or in trying to explain gaps in employment. Let's say I was in one field, dropped out of the labor market, went to school, re-entered in a new labor field, and I've got this gap. It's less about saying what year I graduated, but more about showing what I've been doing and how soon, how recent, how often I've been using these skill sets or this knowledge. Does that make sense?
Can I ask a question while you're on this subject?
Yeah.
I get really good responses from my resumes, but when I do the applications on the online form, I've tailored everything to take out the tenure in, excessive tenure in the resume part of it. So if you download the resume and your cover letter and then they go to the application page, then it asks for specific dates. Is there any tricks to how to get around that so that you don't look like you need an anthropologist to read your freaking...
If it's asking for that information, give it to them. But again, if you've done your summary right, if you've done these other things on your resume, that's 2 data points that they can use to say, what's the full picture, as opposed to just the 1 data point.
So where they ask for specific job dates, starting dates and end dates and all that stuff, do you just leave it blank? I mean, a lot of times it's relevant. They won't allow you to proceed.
Yeah, if they're asking, I would say fill it out.
Fill it out, okay.
They are looking for an amount of experience.
Okay.
But if you're worried that you have too much, then we go back to our other tips of, am I applying unrealistically for the role? How have I positioned myself related to pay potential, expectations in the role, engagement in the role? There's no perfect answer. That is what it is.
Thank you.
And so just a couple of quick takeaways. and the first two to me are probably the most powerful if you are not social media inclined, which is okay. But use social media to help you stand out. Use it to be seen by recruiters. You don't need to put your life online. You don't need to become an extrovert if you're an introvert. Use it for the tool that it is being used for on the other side by businesses. Be mindful about positioning your experience to the role rather than, but this is me, don't make me restate myself in any other way. Show me how well you match. Be aware of your skill gaps so that A, you eliminate them, but B, be prepared to position yourself for success. And then we get lots of quantity, but making sure you're expressing quality in what you do in your experience, especially when you're overqualified. That quality factor is where you shine. Why not use that as your strength? So, questions. This is a tag team.
So real quickly, just from what I've heard, we of the older folks just need to embrace the cactus, the technology.
Mike knows my phrase. Let's just hug the cactus. It's prickly. We're gonna hug it. We're gonna get on LinkedIn. We're just gonna do this.
Can you go back to the other screen?
This one? Yes.
Yeah. Because this is the new way of.
It is.
Of doing it. If we're talking professional, in a professional situation.
Yep.
You know.
Does your recruiting agency have a particular website that we can visit to look for? Do you guys post job openings on your website? I'm not familiar with it yet.
So I currently work for a company called BambooHR. Anybody can go to bamboohr.com/careers. Most organizations that have a website have a place for all of their careers job ads. You can find them on company LinkedIn profiles. Indeed is a huge one. I would say that that's where a majority of the applicant flow kind of referral channel links come from. Those are other great places to explore.
If you want to have a great fun experience, go to the YouTube channel for BambooHR.
Oh, okay.
They have some absolutely amazing videos on there that are just funny, relevant, and it's just amazing. It's great. It's a great channel.
Yeah,
I'm impressed already.
We focus on the that's awesome. We focus on the field of HR. Our product actually provides a software that HR professionals use, but we also care deeply about the issues that HR professionals are facing in organizations, like being in talent acquisition and not having enough time to respond and connect with these humans who are excited and want to have jobs and want to use their skills. So there are pain points on both sides, and it's fun to be in an organization where we kind of get a look at both sides and do things that help our organization grow, but then even come and reach out to those in the community and help them be successful as well.
Often are cover letters used anymore?
Cover letters?
I think they're important.
Yeah, they're very important.
So here's my experience. I get
right from the recruiter's mouth.
I get this question a lot. And what I tell people is I look at cover letters when I am not sure, or like I see red flags, or I'm just kind of like, I don't know if it's really going to be a fit. I go straight to the cover letter to learn more information, just like I would to a LinkedIn profile. Because I don't want to decline unless I know for certain this candidate isn't going to fit what we're looking for. So it is helpful if you want to make sure the recruiter has all the information they need necessary to make the right decision.
You know, describe a cover letter that you would like to read.
One that doesn't have spelling and grammar mistakes, or one that is actually addressed to our company and not another company. So that would be important. I see it a lot.
Yeah, I could see how people really get.
Content. Do you like it if someone is kind of humorous and not spot on? I mean, they're just kind of like.
It depends on the company that they're applying for. Because I know for, Bamboo, I've had candidates send me YouTube videos that they've made of themselves, describing their resume, giving more content and detail about who they are, and what they do to act as a cover letter, which they can do. And it worked out because it gave us more in-depth knowledge. But the cover letter itself, as long as it's just, you know, the one page where it's, you know, they're not going into 20 pages, but like explaining more about why this role is going to be the best fit for them, what they're going to do for the company in this role, and just going more to depth. And it's okay if they're a little bit funny, but still be professional and still speak the way that the company speaks. And that's where that research comes in, is how is that company going to take the way you approach it.
I would say be authentic to yourself, but yeah, find that right balance of professional, personal, right? Let your personality shine. I'm not going to do a cover letter unless it's customized for every individual company that I'm applying for. I've already tailored my resume, and my cover letter is the handwritten invitation, right? I think it deserves that level of attention if you're going to do that. Now, you could try to genericize it, but guess what? Recruiters see so many of them, they'll tell the difference.
And how long on average would you say someone looks at a resume?
It depends on the recruiter and the workloads and all that.
Because we always hear like not very much time, and so make sure you have.
Quicker is better, but let's say you're applying for a job that needs you to be concise and get to the point. If you're long-winded in your cover letter, it's counterproductive to the position. If it's one that needs to express some technicality, then how do you do that but still be concise?
So you've got your resume, you've had your interview, and you sent out your thank you note. How long should you wait to recontact them? Because I find companies are asking me to be professional in my presentation to them, but it's rarely reciprocated. I can call them 2 weeks later and say, oh yeah, we filled that job. You know, and it's like, you know, what happened? I had an interview, and you know, what's going on? So what is a good timing to follow up after the thank you? I know you give a thank you, but what is the timing?
Ask them, right? When can I expect to hear from you? And if I haven't, what's an appropriate time to follow up? Let them give you guidance. The one thing that I would ask, which is a lot because I get it from both sides, it's frustrating to feel like, hey, you didn't reciprocate the respect. I know that most recruiters are trying their hardest to find people great jobs, and it's really hard to tell people when it's no. And they don't intend to be impersonal and not care and show that human caring. So know that it isn't personal, and in the busyness of going through 15,000 applications a year, not everybody's going to have that optimal experience. What's interesting is I have seen people handle it two ways. On the one hand, they get frustrated and upset, which is understandable, but then they choose to engage with the company from that place. And the other person I see is frustrated but remains professional. People burn bridges, right? I mean, you know you've arrived as a recruiter when you get your first F-bomb thrown at you because you weren't a good fit for the job, and I'm just doing my job and I got cursed at. So I would say, even if it's frustrating, even if you're not receiving the level of experience or professionalism that you want, be the example.
It dawned on me a while ago that as hard as it is to receive a no from a company, it's just as hard to give a no to a bunch of people who are applying for your company, especially if you think that you wish you had 10 spots and you only got 7. So that's kind of a perspective to think about it. It's hard for you guys to say no.
Yeah, I think most recruiters, when I ask them why they do it, it's like, because they love helping people get great jobs. They love just making somebody's day. And so it's the worst to do the opposite. But, yeah.
2 ways to usually try to apply for a job is either directly at the company website, right? That's where I tend to go first. Even if I see it on LinkedIn, I see how many people already applied, try to be the early applier. If it fits, if the job fits what I really want to do, and I can add quite a lot of value immediately. So that means a lot of industries that I've already had experience in, I also try to apply to, right? But the other option is to hit one button in LinkedIn to apply. Any tips? Do you guys prioritize LinkedIn applications versus the direct?
No, because it actually, when I post the job to LinkedIn, it links directly to our site. And so it's just like applying to our site. Yeah.
Well, no, you came from LinkedIn, but it won't.
Yeah, we won't be like, all right, 10 brownie points, you know.
Dang it.
Do you guys get the Indeed, or does it still link over to yours, or do you get the Indeed resume? Because sometimes I know people can put their resume Indeed and then do a quick apply.
Uh-huh.
But that's not really going to help you targeting and doing all those things we
Correct.
talked about. But do you guys see those from your Indeed differently, or does it link as well?
So if you've clicked apply and it just immediately applies, sometimes the resume might not come through perfectly, but we have a download button where we're able to download it, where it'll format correctly. But yeah.
Yeah, so if you care about your customized resume, yes, LinkedIn, you found the job, you can go through, go to the company's direct careers website, apply through there so you can attach the resume you want rather than otherwise you're going to have to keep switching out your Indeed.
Yes.
So if you get it from both, is that a year or two? Is that a good or a bad?
I just press duplicate. So I mean, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because earlier you said if you had a whole bunch,
yeah.
you saw somebody applying for 60
yeah.
different things.
And if you apply through LinkedIn and through Indeed, they'll just hit duplicate and it just puts them together as one. So you don't end up twice.
Okay. Another quick question about LinkedIn. As recruiters, do you see other confidential information about myself, my profile, my content that other recruiters have seen? Is there like a hidden area in LinkedIn that recruiter A, B, C from the companies said, oh, Scott's a great candidate, but it didn't fit?
Nope.
So you see what we see.
Yep.
And that's it. Okay.
Yep.
How about, do you see other people's views of my profile?
No.
Okay.
So from a resume's formatting perspective, columns or no columns, how does it impact?
I was going to say, I'll refer you to the last one we did. I'm particular in my flavor and what I like. At the end of the day, how do you be clear? How do you highlight to stand out? Being more and more thoughtful. Sticking with just the standard template out of Microsoft Word. I got 100 of those versus one that looks slightly different. I'm going to have to pay attention differently to that other resume. It doesn't need to be wild and crazy. So without going into an hour discussion, maybe Mike could share the other one that JD Conway, our talent acquisition manager, and I came and talked about resumes and how we look at those.
I was going to just ask you, within your HR team, how many, categorically, different applicants, do you have certain particular people that go after science and technology fillings, and so they're grouped in different categories of like administrative, executive administration?
Every company will be different. We do a business partnership model, which means these set of managers, here are your recruiters, and you focus in their realm. So we have a tandem team that focuses on all our client-facing roles. We have a tandem team that does all of our tech, dev, product roles. We have a tandem that's for marketing, one that's for sales.
Okay. So is there also, do you guys offer up workshops and things, or possibly job fairs? Will those be posted on your company site if you do those? For specific types of candidates? Or?
We are not big enough that we, as a company, do our own job fairs, but we will go out to job fairs. Okay. We don't go to all of them. We say, what are the roles we need to fill right now, and will this job fair put us in front of people with that kind of experience, yes or no? And that's how our organization chooses to do that.
And is there a particular category that you're finding you have more need for, but fewer applicants that you're really desperately seeking? Are there like a top 3?
No, we're hiring in all departments, all roles. One of the fun things being in the HR realm together is we've had a really good support team in building a great positive employer brand, which helps us get a plethora of applicants. So while we have a really hot labor market, right, and we're borrowing from Employers are borrowing from one another to have the right talent. Our organization is not necessarily starved for talent.
Thank you so much.